I Hate Politics is a podcast about a human activity we love to hate. I am Sunil Dasgupta. Montgomery County, Maryland is a suburban jurisdiction of over 1 million people, just north of the Washington, D.C. diamond on the map. The southern end of the county is urbanizing, but the rest of the county remains a classic suburb with leafy roads, single-family homes, car-dependent, and decent schools, at least in the wealthier parts. I know most listeners know this already. At least you know the archetype. But it is a good introduction to what I am going to say next, which is that homelessness in Montgomery County is mostly, and I want to stress mostly, an invisible problem. I'm not saying that it does not exist, but rather that it exists out of the public eye. Unlike 10 cities in Portland, Philadelphia, and even in Washington, D.C., most of Montgomery County's homeless people hide in forgotten places, in the folds of our modern architecture, between transportation infrastructure and housing, the neglected land between state and county administrations, between private and public property, highway islands and underpasses, the wooded no man's land between roads and neighborhoods, the area behind large buildings and shopping centers, and abandoned buildings. We miss them driving at 25 miles an hour. You may not see them even if you were on foot unless you go looking for them. Glenn Feldman went looking. The publisher of a local news and advocacy website, Montgomery Fix, and its sister satirical publication, Montgomery Leak, in December 2025 discovered an encampment in an abandoned building at the intersection of Wears Mill Road and University Boulevard in Wheaton. It housed maybe half a dozen people, and you would see them panhandling and sitting on the sidewalk when you were in the area, but unless you entered the fenced-off property, you wouldn't see the encampment itself. He published a report on his website, which brought out the county government and the property owners. The encampment was removed and the area cleaned out. The county government has a homeless assistance unit which went into action and sought to find accommodations for persons living there. Since then, Feldman has been pursuing a project on understanding homelessness in Montgomery County, finding many hidden spaces around the county, and has posted several stories and videos on the subject. He found out that the State Highway Administration clears out encampments from lands they control as part of their maintenance schedule. But what happens next? Do the unhoused return and rebuild, like beach homeowners after a hurricane? Do they move to newer hidden spaces, in an ode to human ingenuity, forever 2 steps ahead of authorities? Feldman met with Christine Hong, the head of the Homeless Assistance Unit in the county's Department of Health and Human Services, and found out that while the county has a generous approach toward homeless persons, the policy does not include a timeline for removing encampments. 2 recent cases of visible homelessness, one at a Kensington bus stop and another across the street from Leisure World in Aspen Hill, led Feldman to argue on his website that the absence of a timeline for removing homeless encampments is failing the communities that have to deal with the resulting public disorder while allowing vulnerable people to continue to live in squalid and often dangerous conditions. This is a tension long understood in the mental health community, where the closure of sometimes horrendously bad facilities going back to the 1980s put more people out into the streets. Generally, mental health and substance use are believed to underlie chronic homelessness, though of course it is also tied to housing affordability, a key issue in this year's elections. Since his reporting, the Kensington bus stop has been cleared after 6 continuous months of occupation. But Feldman says that the problem is not going away. He found a tent on the sidewalk of University Boulevard, up the street from Kensington, going towards Wheaton. Glenn Feldman joins us for this episode to talk about suburban homelessness, hidden spaces, and the limits of social compassion. Stay with us. I Hate Politics is a podcast about our neighborhoods, workplaces, schools and streets, and our local governments as they function in diverse and democratic societies. This means our politics are messy, dirty, sometimes corrupt, with often self-serving politicians. But no matter how much we may hate politics, we are never exempt from it, even when we refuse to participate. In fact, the purpose of politics is to keep society functioning precisely when we don't agree with each other, like now. Music for this episode comes from Baltimore-based musician Seth Keibel's new album, Clarinet Without a Net. Maximilian Jacobs on violin, Erin Murphy Snedecor on cello, R.N. Buckheister, dobro, acoustic guitar and mandolin, Tom Holtz, helicon, Rowan Corbett, percussion, and Seth Keibel himself on the clarinet. Jeff Gruber at Blue House Productions in Silver Spring recorded, mixed, and mastered the album. Glenn Feldman, welcome back to I Hate Politics.
Thank you for having me, Sunil.
For several months now, you have been pursuing a project on homelessness in Montgomery County. How did you start on it?
I have a second website called Montgomery Leak. It's a satire and humor website. I do physical pranks, sometimes in communities. And I was scouting an area in Wheaton that I had a prank in mind for. And it was right across the street from Wheaton Plaza. And I noticed in an area where there used to be a building, the Ambassador apartment building, which was leveled to make room for a new development, that there was an underground parking garage that was still in place. They had taken away everything above it, but left the garage. And from the sidewalk, I could see through cracks in the fence and the screening there that there was quite a few people living in the shelter there, underneath the parking garage.
When was that and how many people were there?
December 25. And I could guess that there were at least 4 or 5. It was hard to really know. When I went in there, I was absolutely floored. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I've been in homeless areas before, but the level of filth and degradation and needles and just all kinds of crazy stuff going on I was shocked. I've never seen anything like that in Montgomery County. I never would have imagined something like that even could exist in Montgomery County. So I took a video and I narrated it and then I put it online. And the reaction was phenomenal. I mean, people were just shocked. They were as horrified as I was. There were tens and tens of thousands of views. The following business day, Tuesday, the county was out there with the police, the Department of Housing and Community Affairs, the owner of the property. They shut it down. They boarded it up. They cleared it out. They reinforced the fencing, all in a day or two's time. And it really, made me wonder, gosh, is this just a one-time thing? And I started thinking about all the times I've driven past spots in the woods and seen tarps and known that, there's someone living in the woods. And I started thinking, well, how many are there? How often does that happen? And that led to what I've called the Hidden Spaces series, where I've gone around Montgomery County looking in the spaces where homeless people make camps. And not the usual ones like you might see on a sidewalk, but deep in the woods or off the grid. I've documented over 30 so far. And I don't think I've even scratched the surface. And what I found is that there is an enormous population of homeless individuals who just live in our forests, in the easements of our highways. It's really eye-opening. And so I've been putting a lot of videos online. You can see it on the Facebook page for Montgomery Fix. And the reaction from the public has been overwhelming. Most people are really astounded to know the extent of the problem.
Who are these people Do you have a sense of where they're coming from? What do we know about them?
There is a high level of dysfunction in terms of substance use disorder, mental health illness, post-traumatic stress disorder, extreme financial burden. The people who I've met, most of them are from, if not Montgomery County, at least from the area, or they've been here a while. They didn't come here to be homeless. They're more black and white than brown. Not so many accents, not so many immigrants, or that's a common myth that this is a problem born of the immigration rules during the Biden administration. This is not. This is a local problem.
What about gender, age? Do you have other demographic sense of?
I don't know that I'm seeing the full population that I can really say, but I'm seeing more males than females.
Significantly more or?
Significant. Age-wise, there's a lot of younger men, late 20s into their early 40s. There's a rising older population.
So you did write about the stats on homelessness in the county, and you found that the county has been particularly good with respect to homeless families, and those numbers have dropped dramatically, close to 50% between last year and this year. But the number of senior homeless people has grown, really increased. Above 65 is almost grown by 18%.
I don't know that I'm seeing enough of a representative sample to be able to say, but there are a lot of senior people who I see on the streets with walkers. These are the ones who you see in downtown Silver Spring, around Wheaton Plaza, around the metro stations.
The county does, in fact, Washington region, all jurisdictions do something called a point-in-time survey of homelessness. So the county, when they count, they're counting the visible. You are finding invisible hidden spaces where they're probably not being counted. So we get a different sampling, you think, as a consequence?
I would be surprised if all of the people living in spots that I've identified this year are in the point-in-time survey count. And I say that because a lot of these spots are very hard to get to. They're not just a few feet off the shoulder of the highway, they're deep within the woods, and you've got to go through, thickets to get there. Sometimes they're intentionally placed in areas where you kind of got to go through a little obstacle course. You would never be able to go through there at night. It would be impossible to get through logistically, and then it would be extremely dangerous. So I know that, the point-in-time survey is done in the evening hours. I'm certain that they're not in those spots. So that's a big chunk of people. Now, it could be that they count the people if they have visited them previously. I'm not as familiar with how that works. Every encampment that I find that unless I already know that it's on the county's radar, I send an email to Services to End and Prevent Homelessness directly to Dr. Christine Hong, and it gets sent out to one of the outreach groups. So
describe a little bit more about what kinds of places these are that tend to be hidden spaces.
Let's talk about Quince Orchard and Quince Orchard Road and I-270 in Gaithersburg. There were, when you're on Quince Orchard, there's a southbound and a northbound, entrance ramps that go to 270, and they each go around loops, and then they loop around and get you on the highway. So within the center of each of those loops, there were encampments. And they'd been there for a long time, years. And I went into one and documented it and shared it with the county and with the city of Gaithersburg, and they were well aware of it. Over the course of several months, I would periodically drive by. I'd peek through the woods. Sometimes I'd even get out of my car and hustle in and just take a quick look. And one day, I noticed there was a sign in one of the circles that said, "This area is to be cleared by the State Highway Administration in 30 days. And I was surprised because I'd never seen that before. And sure enough, 30 days later, the State Highway Administration came in and cleared that one out. That hidden space was almost completely invisible to the public. In the winter, you could see bits of blue tarp and tents through the thickets, but in the summer months when the leaves were in, you absolutely could not see that encampment at all. They're very close to people, they're very close to cars, shopping centers, oftentimes houses, but out of sight in a hidden space, and a space that's not used by the public, but it is a public space. In Flower Hill, there is a section of woods between a shopping center and a neighborhood. And in those woods, there are quite a few homeless people living, actually. Their shelters are tucked away in this little strip where if you're driving by, you wouldn't see it. If you're in the shopping center, you wouldn't see it. You only really know it's there when you look closely and you see the little paths going through the bushes. If you're on the other side of the encampment, in the neighborhood, it's a little different because I've stood in the backyards of two of the homes and talked to the homeowners. You can see the tents in the woods behind the fences of their houses. They're hidden spaces, but they're not that hidden.
Homeless people are trying to live their lives, want to find these hidden spaces that are invisible in some ways, but they're also dependent on people and the larger economy for food, for money.
There's a lot of camps that are in the woods near a convenience store, a 7-Eleven, a 24-hour gas station, a Walmart, a supermarket. The people need an economy, and a lot of times it's panhandling, and so they need to have traffic. They need to have foot traffic or car traffic if they're on the street. And then, they need resources. They need food and water and the basic necessities of life. I see a lot of encampments that are, within a few blocks of that type of area. There are some that are deeper off the grid. And I find in those cases that they're much more planned. You have a better built structure. You have jugs of water. There's one I'm thinking of that has a shower.
Generally, what is the state of the land where these encampments are?
Absolutely awful. The number one comment I get back from people who see the videos that I post is, why is there so much trash there? Let's go back to Gaithersburg. One of the two circles had 3 structures the size of a large tent. Immediately in front of it was a garbage field that extended into the woods, I would say 25 yards. A thick garbage field, in some places probably 2 or 3 feet thick. This was years worth of trash accumulation, flies and odors and everything you would associate with it. There's an area off Randolph Road that I've documented extensively where I'm going to say conservatively 10,000 beer bottles per acre, and it's a 15-acre spot. Really, it's that much. When you allow that much destruction of the environment over that long of a period of time, it has consequences.
Well, if there is that much garbage, clearly the agencies responsible for that land are not cleaning it up.
I don't think they know it's there. I can think of a spot near the Shady Grove Waste Transfer Station. Those are woods nobody ever goes into. There's no reason to go into it. It's not a park. They're not pretty woods. They're just kind of scrub woods on the side of an old dump. And, I don't know that anyone really goes in and looks at it besides me and some outreach workers.
If nobody else goes there and they're living there, what's the problem?
This is next to the Shady Grove Waste Transfer Station. When it rains on the transfer station, all across that whole giant asphalt place where people drop off all of their various garbage, the water runs off into these woods. It's not a safe environment. We can't stand there and go, well, we don't see it. It doesn't bother us. It's okay for someone to live there. No, it's not okay for anyone to live there. It's a toxic environment.
Even if it may be dangerous to them and they can't live elsewhere, why not allow them? Obviously, it's got to be a wink and a nod, but live and let live.
So let's talk about areas that have taken that approach and what's happened to them in the years since. 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes, and on and on and on. Portland, or closer to home in Philadelphia, what you find is that when permissive policies and the wink and the nod went into place, the population started to grow. You're inviting the problem to get worse. You're not ending homelessness. You're encouraging it. You're enabling it.
These encampments have been there for years, some of them for decades. So it's not like this is not already there and it has not become Portland.
You're wrong. There's a lot more of them now than there used to be. The population of chronically homeless and individually homeless has only been going up, not down, but is definitely worse now than it's ever been.
But how do we know that?
We know that through the point in time survey. So the numbers started going up before COVID. The numbers were starting to go down in the mid 2010s, and then they started going up again before COVID. Then with COVID, they went, things got all wacky, and they've only been going up since. So it's a up and down phenomenon through time, but we are at a high point right now.
We don't know what the point in time survey captures and doesn't capture, right?
Right. We know it anecdotally. We know it from speaking to people who've lived in communities for years. I know it because I've lived in Montgomery County for 58 years. And I spent my youth walking around the woods of Montgomery County, and I haven't stopped since. What I'm seeing now is new. It's different.
What is the county's policy on homelessness? I know that you've talked to Christine Hong in the Department of Health and Human Services. What have you learned?
So the county follows a housing first model. So the idea is that a person's problems and situations, whatever is going on in their lives, those can be worked out once they have a roof over their head. That roof over the head is the number one priority, and everything else we take care of later. Within the housing first strategy, you've got to convince somebody to come off the streets and go into housing. And that's a very difficult proposition. There are, of course, some people who want nothing more than to get off the streets. They are, desperate for it. But there are a significant number of people who they don't really want to. They're not compelled to. And so the county has a strategy where they form relationships. They do outreach. And it takes a lot of time. They've got to build trust with people who are inherently distrustful of authority and of government. And then they've got to convince those people to accept government aid and move into government-funded housing. And the county is successful in it. They do make it happen, but it takes a long time. And sometimes it just never happens, but they just keep trying. On that score, I feel the policy is flawed. There should be a deadline. And so the county's policy of unlimited camping on public spaces until the individual chooses of their own free will to leave is where neighborhoods end up getting, being unheard and unseen. And so, if you look at Kensington, Maryland, where a homeless group was camping in a bus stop for 5 months, the town lost use of the bus stop, and it had a lot of other effects on the town as well.
Is there a difference between being visible? So, for example, the case of the older couple at the Kensington bus stop who have been there for, I think, 6 months. There's a second category of encampments which are far hidden, not a clear encroachment on public order. Are there two different types we are dealing with?
I don't think so. I think we're dealing with people who have different wherewithals. If you're a senior citizen and you're homeless, it's hard to slog through the woods a couple times a day and build a shelter out of sticks. It's a lot easier to sit in a bus shelter on a bench and be surrounded by blankets and pillows, which is what the situation was. Over in Leisure World, it is a younger person. It's an adult male. I believe the reason why he stays where he is because he has access not only to food and an economy through panhandling, and he has access to substances. And so I think that that's another reason that compels people to stay in certain areas, because they have a familiarity with a marketplace that they're dependent on.
Just to clarify, the Leisure World case is across the gate of Leisure World, across from Georgia Avenue.
Everybody knows the giant globe in front of Leisure World at the corner of Rossmore Boulevard and Georgia Avenue. Directly across Georgia Avenue from the globe in those woods is the area we're talking about. And there is a Metro bus stop, which is about 10 feet from the area where the person sleeps and has his possessions. And it's used by a lot, and I mean a lot, of caretakers and employees of Leisure World who come in and out through that main gate. And then to a lesser extent, but also by residents of Leisure World, the ones who don't have cars, the ones who would prefer to use public transportation.
Has there been effort to remove this person from outside of Leisure World?
I know for a fact that CEF has been there. CEF is Services to End and Prevent Homelessness. They've been there. They've interacted with him. But he wants to stay there. I've tried to interact with him. He asked me to leave him alone.
You were able to communicate some, at least, with the older couple in the Kensington bus stop, right?
There's an older gentleman who's always happy to talk. The woman, at one point when I went there, she was sobbing unconsolably, and there was nothing anyone could say or do to help her.
Now, they used to live in the Silver Creek Senior Center, not far away from the bus stop, and they were evicted.
They actually were evicted from two different places, I've learned, in Kensington, Silver Creek, and then a place before it. My understanding is that it's not a money issue, it's an activity issue.
The county did offer them alternative housing.
That's what they had told me. The county offered them something in the Gaithersburg or possibly Germantown area. I don't know what it was. My guess is that it was not, a rental, and probably either a shelter or more likely a motel. And if it's the spot, I think it is in Gaithersburg. It's not like downtown Kensington. It's not like there's a 7-Eleven and 3 gas stations. There's one shopping center with a limited number of stores. Most of them are not ones that sell food and beverage, and they close early. That's very isolating. There's not much they're going to be able to do there.
The problem of refusal seems to be at the center. The county seems to have a policy that takes refusal seriously and will not push a homeless person into the available housing that they have. From the point of view of the homeless person, they may argue that it is not enough, it's not appropriate, inadequate. This is just a lot of talk and there is no action. What is the answer?
Compulsion is the answer. You have to compel somebody to do it by giving them a few different options and forcing them to take one. And none of those options are sitting where you are right now and remaining in this place. It just happened. I published my report Monday morning. Tens of thousands of people read it in the first hours. It was shared dozens and dozens of times. And the next day, yesterday, the police pulled up. Now, the police have been there almost every day for 5 or 6 months. But what was different is this time when they pulled up, it wasn't Montgomery County Police. It was Montgomery County Police and the WMATA Police, the Metro Police. Put a no trespass order out immediately on the people in the bus stop. The county's homeless teams were there, crisis teams were there, and they went with the crisis teams and they left, and they were gone last night. And in the immediate aftermath, the bus stop was swept clean. All the debris was gone. Their possessions are stored nearby. I had read a letter from CEF to the mayor of Kensington 2 days before that, basically saying, we're working on this and we need you to be patient. Well, the patience ran out. Montgomery County Police Department is held back, but the Metro Police can do what they need to do or want to do. And so they took back their space, just like the State Highway Administration does. They take back their spaces.
There is a cat and mouse game that is played between authorities and homeless people. If you're homeless, you'll know there's going to be a crackdown and you have to find another different place to go. Either you take the county up on its offer of housing, as inadequate as that might be, or you find another hidden space where you can go hide. What is the solution?
Yes, that will always happen, but it's a game of attrition. Houston, Texas is my best example. They've seen some people just set up their camp on the other side of the road. Some people move into housing, and some people go to the next county over or the next state over. Houston has seen a significant reduction in their adult single homeless population.
Is that part of the solution, to make it somebody else's problem?
Yes. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but that's the consequence of enforcement, is that you are pushing the problem over to a jurisdiction that has more permissive policies.
In the mental health space, this has long been a tension, the refusal problem and the cat and mouse problem. In the 1980s, they started to deinstitutionalize mental health institutions, so close them down. And instead of offering them other services, housing, other things, they essentially put a lot of folks out into the street. Those institutions are not back, in part because they were run horrendously. Given that government and society together has failed to provide for our most vulnerable, where do you think is the line between individual freedoms and community interests?
It's like a Star Trek line, the good of the many outweighs that of the few or the one. They probably should have let Spock just stay on that planet and not risked, the entire Enterprise to go back and save him. He certainly thought that was the wrong move. He said it was illogical, and it is illogical. You can't allow an entire community to take a back seat to one person. You can't say it's okay to have a tent blocking the sidewalk and who knows what running off underneath it into the gutters for a year or more. That's not fair to the community.
In the last 50 years, we have moved significantly more towards individual freedoms. The land of the free and the home of the brave has a very particular connotation now of individual freedom, not collective good.
Okay. I don't know what you want me to do with that.
Have you thought about how your reporting might be disrupting the lives of those that are most vulnerable amongst us?
Yeah, I have. And I try to be very careful not to disclose a location that isn't already widely known because it's, visible from the street, or if I know a clearance action is about to happen, which I just happened to have recently. And I never show faces. I wouldn't say I feel guilty about it, though. I feel like I haven't put them at any greater jeopardy than they're already at living in the woods. And I don't think that human beings should live in the manner in which I've seen 95% of them living. And I think that we as a society can do better and help them more. And we having, like, right now, not like stuff we have to create. Like, we spend hundreds of millions of dollars every year to end and prevent homelessness. So let's end and prevent it.
You mean nationwide?
No, I mean hundreds of millions of dollars in Montgomery County. How much does it cost for the police officers in Kensington, Maryland to stop over 100 times at a bus stop in 5 months? How much does it cost for EMS crews to show up there once a week? Think about all of the expenses Montgomery County has on top of the hundreds of millions of dollars that, yes, SEF got every penny it asked for. The county executive's budget for homeless services, which I don't have in front of me, was hundreds of millions, and they got every single penny.
Glenn Feldman, thank you.
Thank you for having me. I guess if I was going to, give a concluding remark to people, it would be that you shouldn't be angry at the homeless people. You should be angry at the failures of society and the government. We can do better than this. We have the money, we have the will, we have the empathy, we have the compassion. We can do better. I know we can.
That's all for this episode of I Hate Politics, where we aim to stem the decline in local news by working with community voices. Don't forget to tune in to our Tuesday morning news analysis. I Hate Politics is produced by me, Sunil Dasgupta. Music for this episode comes from Baltimore-based musician Seth Keibel's new album, Clarinet Without a Net. Maximilian Jacobs on violin, Erin Murphy Snedecor on cello, R.N. Buckheister, dobro, acoustic guitar and mandolin, Tom Holtz, helicon, Rowan Corbett, percussion, and Seth Keibel himself on the clarinet. Jeff Gruber at Blue House Productions in Silver Spring recorded, mixed, and mastered the album. If you want to share your music on the show or know someone else who might want to, please email producer@ihbpod.org. I hope you'll subscribe and share the podcast as we bring you stories about politics close to you and to your home. See you next time.